Welcome back to another episode of the Flying G Huddle, your inside look at Gladwin football. I'm Casey Campbell. I am your host, and we are pleased to be joined each and every week by my co-host, the head football coach at Gladwin football. That, of course, is Marc Jarstfer. Welcome back to the show. Another win for you guys, and quite a game on Friday.
Yeah, absolutely. That was wild. This morning was the first time that I had a chance to sit down and watch it. Yesterday morning, I just spent time hanging out with my family and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's just as crazy when I watched it this morning as it was the night that it happened. And so, crazy circumstances. I'm sure we'll kind of get into that a little bit as the show gets going. But being able to come back from that sort of deficit was obviously a big deal. And got another win, and so it keeps us going in the right direction.
Absolutely. So let's start off. With the game. They start off with. So Clare gets on the board first. Ryan Loach gets in the end zone. And they go up 7-0, and then you guys respond back with a with the field goal from Trayton to make it 7-3 at the end of the first.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll start by saying this: the Clare is definitely like as advertised. They're really good football team. And that first drive that they ended up punching in on a 7-0 start was a super long Ryan Louch kick return, and then they just methodically drove it right down the field and ended up capping it with the way that it started, with a slant pass to Louch from 10 yards out. And so they certainly had the momentum in their favor with the big kick return, and the game was already built up to be a massive game and with a lot on the line, and so to come out right away and respond with the way that they did was a big deal. And so we obviously got the ball back after that touchdown, or got the ball, or first crack at it, and I wasn't really sure how they were going to play us defensively. You got a lot of ideas of what you think people will do and that sort of thing. And so going into it, it was going to be kind of like that chess match that I talked about, and trying to understand that. And so we weren't able to really do anything initially, but I think on our second drive, it may have been even the third one, I don't recall, but we were able to get ourselves down into field goal range, and Trayton was able to get us on the board to get started with a field goal in that first quarter.
Yeah. All right. Now let's go to the second now. Clare gets 2 touchdowns on you. Aiden Van Bon gets in to make it 14-3. And then Jaden Arthur runs it in to make it 21-3. So at this point, what are you guys thinking right now?
Yeah, I mean, that's not ideal, right? Like, it's a big game, and to go down 21-3 was really not ideal at all. After that Aiden Van Bon score, I believe we threw a pick, around midfield. Louch, I believe, picked that off. Jace Massey kind of incidental contact and went down, and Louch was right place, right time. Caught the interception and ran it back into good position, and then they were able to go up 3 scores right away. And so we talked about with our kids that there were going to be big swings in the game. Clare was going to make big plays. They potentially would go up a score 2 on us, but we would have to stay in it and stay focused the entire time. And so really, on that next drive, we had to find a way to answer. And so we were driving it down, and we got inside the 15. Colton Finnegar was injured on the quarterback run play that set us up in that position. Ultimately ended up having to leave the game, and so we went with Mason Meyer to come in relief there, just to try to keep everything as consistent as possible and not have to move a bunch of guys around. Mason's a guy that had played quarterback pretty much his entire life up until high school, and he's repped it with us a lot over the summer and stuff like that. He's a very capable passer, and so that was our idea: is okay, if we can plug him in, we can still keep essentially our game plan intact. And so I think as soon as he went in, we had kind of a high snap, and it was over his head, and Trace ended up catching it, scrambling around, and it was a big loss on the play. And he ended up, we get into a third down and long situation. He ends up dropping back to pass, scrambling down the sideline, not quite enough to pick up a first down. But as he tackles, he tweaks his knee. And so he's out of there. And so now, we're still down 21-3. We attempt a field goal there, now being down 2 quarterbacks. The field goal gets blocked, and so it's like, man, just everything is going wrong. However, we were able to get a stop defensively, and even though the stat sheet that you're looking at says that it was a 33-yard pass from Colton Finnegar to Jaden Miskey, that was actually Jace Massey that had come in as our third quarterback in that game. And he did a good job of, operating our offense. He's definitely more of a runner with his athleticism and that sort of thing. That's his strong suit. And after we ran a couple quarterback sweeps with him, we figured, they were going to start to try to take that away. But that was super pivotal point in that game as well. Being down those multiple scores, and there's about a minute left in half before the half when we started that drive. And so, we went to the air with Jace, and he threw a great ball to Jaden Miskey, and he had, equally as great of a catch over the shoulder to bring that back to 21-10. And so I'll just skip ahead and kind of finish out the half for you.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
So after that, we're still down the 21-10. And I want to say there was 30 seconds, something like that, maybe 40 seconds left, because we scored in basically under 30 seconds. And so we're thinking, okay, we're still down 2 scores. What's the worst that's going to happen if we, onside kick this or kick it short with a chance for us to grab it? And so that's what we did. We were fortunate to recover that, and then I want to say there was a penalty at the end of that kind of scrum there that set us up an even better field position, and I think it was like 2 plays, and we had scored again. And so that was a major swing in the game, to be down 21-3 and score twice in about 30 or 40 seconds going into the half, with an opportunity to get the ball to start the second half. And so something that we talk to our guys a lot about is just being able to be mentally tough, regardless of what the situation is. And that in, football and in life, you're going to face adversity, and you got to be able to persevere through that. Now, when I say that, like, it's, this scenario isn't anything that we would have ever dreamt up as being a possibility. Especially after that injury. And at the time it seemed, fairly serious. And so our guys were pretty shaken up and that kind of thing. But just the ability to keep a level head on their shoulders and stick to the plan and be able to adapt to things was really impressive. And it set us up good for the second half. Yeah,
of course, we'll get to that second half. It was 21-16. When halftime came, Clare got another score. Jacob Halachek caught a pass from Jaden Arthur. It was a 60-yard pass to make the score 28-16. And then you guys really got going in the third quarter. A 15-yard run to make it 28-23. And we got a game again.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I mentioned that we would start the second half with the ball, and we got down into good territory. I believe we turned it over on 4th down. And so Clare took over, and, they have really good players. Halachek is a tall, athletic receiver for Clare. I believe he's only a sophomore. And they just got past our secondary, and he caught it over the top and was able to finish it off with that long reception for a touchdown. And so again, then we find ourselves down 2 scores with a game plan kind of thrown out the window. And so we felt like in that second half, we were really going to have to just draw a lot of things up in the dirt. Of course, we put a few things together at halftime, knowing that that was going to be, the way that we were going to have to proceed forward with Jace at quarterback, and to try to take advantage of his strength running the ball and a few, limited passing concepts. And so we were able to answer with a 15-yard touchdown run, like you mentioned, in the third quarter to make it 23-28, which was great to respond. Right, like if we didn't respond there, and Clare was able to get the ball back and go down and push that thing even further, we would have been in probably some big trouble.
Okay, so and then so it was at the end of the third, it was 28-23, and then in the fourth, you guys really took off. Kind of just talk about that.
Yeah, and so our defense really stepped up in that second half, right? Like when you look at the scoring summary, we were down 21-3 at one point with about a minute left to go in the first half, and from there, we outscored them 41-7 down the stretch. And so a big part of that was our defense stepping up and really becoming pretty stingy and stopping the run and really limiting those big passes. Obviously, we gave up the one big score there, but we really did a good job holding them in check outside of that. And once we got back, the ball, and took that lead with another Massey rushing touchdown to make it 31-28. Then the pressure, I feel like, kind of switched a little bit, and a lot of the momentum had switched, just with the way that we ended that first half, and then we were able to keep them in check and take the lead in the second half. And so I believe from there, we were able to intercept the ball 2 separate times, and score on both of those next possessions following the turnover, to make it 37-28, and then ultimately 44-28. And so, just a crazy game, like I mentioned, with all the ups and downs and emotions and that sort of thing. But we talked about, staying emotionally invested regardless of what the score was. In the time leading up to the game, we didn't know that it would be such an emotional type of game with all the circumstances of it. But our guys did a good job staying mentally tough and sticking, to the plan and adjusting on the fly and doing all the things that it takes to be successful. And so we're super proud of them for that. I have a great group of coaches around us that are able to make good adjustments and that sort of thing. And so at the end of the day, we're 4-0, 2-0 in our league. I guess 3-0 in our league, and making the right steps and progress on finishing the second half of the season strong.
Yeah, hard to believe we're already in week 5 of the season, so that'll be coming up here. So so 44-28 was the final, and first time that you and Steven went up against each other at Clare. Of course, you guys face each other, but that game was at Gladwin. But what was it like to have you two go up against each other in Clare?
Yeah, I mean, it's just an unbelievable environment. They have, top-notch facilities over there with the turf field, and everything is just first class for a rural, small town football environment. And so, like I talked about in the pregame or preview show last week, that it's cool going back and seeing all the people that you remember from your time there and growing up around that school. And so that's always special, but it's really hard to replicate that environment that you get, for a Division 5 and Division 6 school, to have a full house, to have, the crowd roaring, both ways, and the way that game really played out. Just a really neat experience. And it's too bad somebody had to lose that, because both teams are really, really solid teams. And overall, it was just a great experience.
Yeah, for sure. All right, now it's time for the best part of the show. It's time to award your MVPs of the week.
Yeah, so I think the first one is probably a no-brainer, right? Like Jace Massey comes in offensively and spells Colton and Mason after injury. And I think he ended up with 5 touchdowns. His stat line passing was 4 of 11 for 61 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then rushing, he had 17 attempts for 168 yards and 3 touchdowns. And so, for essentially a half of football, his athleticism that we've talked about in detail in previous episodes just really kind of took over and shined through. And he's just a phenomenal player with a very special skill set. And so we're fortunate to have that in our back pocket. When those other guys, go down with injuries, you throw like an elite level athlete back there, and that helps you look better in a hurry. So he did a great job offensively and really took control of that game. I'm sure he would give credit to the offensive line and the rest of the guys that did the job, blocking and creating things for him. Because when he was back to pass and running some of these like quarterback draws and stuff, he had lots of time and lots of good lanes. And so really a team effort, offensively, but the guy that, star shined the brightest would definitely be Jace. Defensively, this week it's going to be another familiar name, Braden Ritchie. I believe this is his first time getting a defensive MVP. I think he was the offensive guy in the Shepherd film. He ended up with 10 tackles and an interception. And his ability to just do what we're asking in the game plan with some of their option football and making sure that he takes care of his responsibility, even if it's not directly impacting his stat line, was really good. But then he also had a good stat game as well. And so great effort out of him. He's really come out of his shell, or however you would want to word that, over the last couple of weeks, and had 2 really nice, back-to-back games. And so we're excited for him going down the stretch, and he's a guy with a lot of experience and has been really well for us. Lastly, for our special teams MVP, I decided to go with like a co-MVP here. It's easy to take, Seegert with his punting ability and extra points. He had a field goal in there and that sort of thing. But Josh Leninger did a nice job as well, and it was on one of the most pivotal plays, where we called that onside kick, short kick. Trayton executed it perfectly, and Josh was scrappy enough to get in there and make sure that he came up with the ball on the bottom of that pile. He was kind of scrapping with a Clare guy, and ultimately came away with it, which is one of the biggest plays of that game when you look at it from a momentum perspective. It's a lot different having a chance to go up and score a second one in under a minute right before the half ends, with the opportunity to get the ball back, as compared to being down 2 scores with the opportunity to get the ball back. And so just being gritty and being able to get in there has kind of been his mantra all the way around, offense, defense, special teams. But I figured that was a fitting spot to share a co-MVP this week for special teams for that effort.
Absolutely. All right. Well, week 4 is in the books. 4-0 on the season. Before we get to previewing, there's a couple things I do want to mention. We haven't had a chance to do this all year. I keep forgetting to do it, but how about your a new segment on the show, the JV team update?
JV team update. And so, that's one I didn't know was coming, but my philosophy on JV is I want the kids to gain experience playing. I want them to enjoy the process, and I want them to grow as football players. As far as like the results, obviously we want to win and that kind of stuff, but I'm not as concerned with that as maybe others would be. And so right now our JV team on the year is 1-3. They lost a really close one in the opener against Ogemaw. Followed it up with a pretty nice win, a shutout win against Harrison in week 2. Shepherd, that was another one that they played really, really well, good football through 3 quarters, and then ultimately ended up dropping that one down the stretch. And then same story kind of in the Clare game this week as well. Really did a nice job, playing in that first half and really through the better part of 3 quarters before kind of just ran out of steam, and it ultimately got away from them late. But when you kind of set the record aside and judge it against kind of what our goals are and our philosophy is on what a JV program should do, they're doing some good things. There's a lot of guys getting experience playing the game, some of them in different positions than they've been used to. For the most part, I think everybody's having a pretty good time. Obviously it improves that experience when the wins are coming, but like everybody knows, the end goal is to get these guys ready for our varsity program, and so I think we're on the right track in that regard.
Okay. Why don't we throw something else at you now? Well, let's do another new segment. Now it's time to introduce, throughout the next few weeks, we'll be introducing, here you like the surprises I have. We're gonna profile a staff member on the staff. So you get to pick one each week. Who do you want to talk about this week, Marc?
I will talk about my right-hand man, Cody Emiett. He was a guy that was a must-have for me when I first got hired. And I think he reached out to me. We both had applied for the head job, and he reached out to me as soon as I got it, and asked if he could be a part of the staff or at least talk and kind of see what the vision was. And we connected like right away. Both have very similar visions. He's our guy that really motivates the team and gets them going in the right direction. All of our guys love him, and as a defensive coordinator, he's as good as they get. And same would be true for coaching our offensive line. Both parts of that, like our offensive line and our defensive players, really take on his identity, which is passionate and hard nosed, and nothing's going to come easy. And it just takes an enormous amount of work ethic. And so, he's great to have around. Like I said, our guys love him. He works harder than anybody I know at making sure that we get things right. And so it's been just a perfect fit. I tell everybody to listen. He's the best assistant coach in the state. And I'm just happy he's with me.
Yeah, of course. Also, what does he do? A lot of people will be interested to see what he does as a day job. What does he, because he teaches in the district, but what does he teach?
Yeah, so he, you hear all these impassioned speeches and kind of his intense demeanor, and then a lot of people find out that he's a kindergarten teacher, and it's like, huh? But he, like I've been around his classroom too, and he runs a tight ship there, and all those little kids love him too in that building. And so it really is, it's cool to see when we're at home games and stuff like that, all the little kids coming up and yelling, "Hey, Mr. Emiett," you see the same type of respect and affection that those little kids have for him, that you do out of our varsity kids as well. And so he's just a genuine good dude that is tremendous asset for our program.
Absolutely. All right. I know there's going to be, all right. Well, that was, we'll feature a staff member for the rest of the season. All right. Just some new ideas I have. I'd like to throw some curveballs at you for baseball terms. So
I like it.
Okay. So I know this week is Merdian, but I know there's also a couple other things that are going to go on this week. Especially with this is also the week that you guys are your B4 week. Of course, the B4 Foundation, of course, started by Terry Hesbrook, who of course is the former head coach at Ithaca. If you haven't heard, or if you don't remember, I'll fill you in. His son Brady, of course, went to Ithaca. Of course, he passed away earlier this year. Took his own life, and of course, the B4 Foundation was founded in his memory to help people with anxiety, feeling anxious or depressed or something like that. And this is also a big week for you because obviously mental health is obviously a big topic in this country, especially among young people as well. kind of just talk about that, what this week's going to be like.
Yeah, and so we, obviously our goal with our kids is to prepare them as well for life after football as humanly possible. And so part of this is like you said, becoming a bigger deal. I want to say that suicide is the number 2 or number 3 leading cause of death in young adults from age 18 to 25. And so it's something that should be taken seriously. And this foundation, is one that's close to home. It's relatable with small town football and people having success and that kind of stuff. And so our entire athletic department at Gladwin High School, all of the fall sports that are going on right now are taking part in this initiative and really using it as a way to spread awareness on mental health and suicide prevention, as well as support the B4 Foundation and their mission of spreading awareness. And it allows us to, as a whole athletic department, have conversations with our student athletes and let them know that it's okay to not be okay, and that there's ways that they can reach out for help, and they live in a really supportive community with their teachers and coaches and school administrators and that sort of stuff. And so rather than just ignoring the issue and pretending that it would never happen in Gladwin, we think it's important to kind of address it and make it known to our athletes that there's ways that they can reach out if they need help, and it's really not their fault if they're feeling the way that they're feeling. And so we will do our best to spread that awareness and try to connect them with the resources that they would need for help. And so that's the big part, like I mentioned, is we just want to take care of our kids and help them grow as people, and that we do care about them in a much bigger role than just what they can do for us on the field or court.
Absolutely. And also, if you yourself are having suicidal thoughts, please dial 988. That is the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. And you can get immediate help today. So I just wanted to make sure I got that out there as well. So going into this week, with Sanford, with Merdian coming up, as the road trip continues for the month of September. Well, actually for the next 2 weeks, what's that going to be like? Heading into a pretty big game this week with Merdian.
Yeah, and so Merdian is a team that's traditionally been very strong. They've had some struggles early this year, but I would expect them to be well prepared and come out swinging to give us their absolute best shot. I have a ton of respect for their coaching staff and the success that they've been able to have lately, and it's one of those matchups where you can't kind of be deceived by their record and fall into that trap of saying that they have a couple losses already this year, and so we'll just be able to go through the motions, because that's absolutely not going to be the case. I firmly believe that coming off the recent success of last year and the success that we've had from the early part of this year, that we're going to get everybody's absolute best shot, because they want to use us as a measuring stick. And so there's no better way to turn your season around from some early season struggles than knocking off an undefeated team and that sort of thing. And so we have to prepare just like we would for any other week, because you can get beat any given week. And so they run a different defense than what we have seen so far this season and throughout our summer, and so that'll take some adjusting to and practice and making sure that we're ready for what they're going to give us there. And then offensively, they're kind of like they're a spread, but it's like a hard nose type of team, and so you got to kind of buckle that chin strap up and come ready to play. But I feel like we'll as always give our kids a game plan that we believe in, and they'll buy into it, and if we do those things like we have, we'll give ourselves a really good chance to be successful again on Friday.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this week's edition of the Flying G Huddle. Tune in next week and we'll recap this week's game against Merdian, and we'll preview next week's game. We'll preview the next week's game against Pinconning. We'll talk to you next week, same time, same place. Have a good night, everybody.